What if a man told you he was from the future and warned that the world was about to collapse? In 2000, John Titor claimed to be a time traveler from 2036, and his predictions about the future were so chilling, some are still shocked by how close they came to reality. Was he for real, or just a master of deception? Let's dive into his wild story. His name was John Titor. Back in the year 2000, he popped up on internet forums and for 4 captivating months laid out a chilling timeline he claimed was our destiny. He gave us the play-by-play, the reasons for the collapse, and the horrifying aftermath. Now, a lot of his predictions didn't pan out, but some of them feel disturbingly more relevant with each passing year. So was John Titor an incredibly creative fraud, or was he a genuine time traveler whose warnings we shrugged off? Today, we're going to break down every part of his story and try to figure out what's real. The story kicks off on November 2nd, 2000. On a forum called the Time Travel Institute, a user with the handle TimeTravel0 made their first post. This was the dial-up era, a time when the internet was still a kind of digital Wild West full of anonymous chat rooms and forgotten corners of the web. In that world, someone claiming to be a time traveler wasn't totally unheard of, but this guy, he felt different. Time Traveler, who later called himself John Titor, wasn't making vague proclamations. He was methodical, almost unnervingly technical. He jumped into detailed conversations, answering hundreds of questions from an audience that was equal parts fascinated and skeptical. He said he was an American soldier from Tampa, Florida, on a mission sanctioned by the government. He explained he had first traveled back to 1975 before making a pit stop in the year 2000 for what he called personal reasons. For 137 days, he commanded the internet's attention, spinning a story so detailed and convincing that it's become one of the web's most persistent mysteries. Then in March 2001, he announced he was leaving. He signed off and was never heard from again, leaving behind a legacy of fear, wonder, and a list of terrifying prophecies. So why would a soldier from 2036 need to travel through time? It wasn't to play the stock market or save a president. According to Titor, his mission was incredibly specific, almost bizarrely so. He was sent to get an IBM 5100 portable computer from 1975. He claimed this specific computer, one of the first of its kind, had a poorly documented and unique feature. It could read and debug several old programming languages. This was critical, he explained, because his future was dealing with a massive computer bug related to Unix systems, a catastrophe known as the 2038 problem. They needed this exact piece of vintage tech to help fix their failing systems. What gave this part of the story a shocking dose of credibility was that this hidden feature of the IBM 5100 was absolutely real. It wasn't common knowledge back in 2000, and the detail made people stop and wonder, how would some random guy on a forum know that? Naturally, the next question was, how did he get here? Titor was more than happy to elaborate. He described his time machine not as some flashy sci-fi spectacle, but as a stationary mass temporal displacement unit powered by 2 topspin dual positive singularities. Essentially, 2 tiny black holes. He said the C204 gravity distortion unit weighed about 500 pounds and was originally mounted in a 1966 Chevrolet Corvette. He even posted schematics filled with technical-sounding terms like electron injection manifolds and Tipler sinusoids. The sheer volume of jargon made his story feel plausible, at least if you weren't a theoretical physicist. John Titor's vision of what's to come wasn't exactly rosy. He described a bleak, fractured world, shattered by war and suffering, and he gave us dates. It would all kick off, he claimed, with growing civil unrest in the US after the 2004 presidential election. He described a nation tearing itself apart, with clashes between city and rural populations over order and rights. Titor warned of a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse, eventually exploding into a full-blown Second American Civil War by 2008. This war wouldn't be fought on traditional battlefields. It would be a messy, decentralized conflict dragging on for years. By 2015, that civil war would finally end, but only because a much bigger fight was about to start: World War III. He described it as a very brief but devastatingly intense nuclear exchange. Russia, he claimed, would launch a first strike on major cities in the United States, China, and Europe. He specifically mentioned Washington, D.C. and Jacksonville, Florida, as being wiped off the map. In the end, 3 billion people would be dead, and the U.S. capital would be moved to Omaha, Nebraska. He also made a few smaller predictions. He warned that mad cow disease would become a serious problem. He claimed the Olympics would be canceled after 2004 because of all the global conflict. And he talked about a future where personal freedoms were sacrificed for security, a prediction that hit a little too close to home for many after laws like the Patriot Act were passed. While some of these smaller claims felt like they could happen, his biggest prophecies had a clear deadline, and that deadline came and went. So what are we supposed to make of all this? The American Civil War didn't happen in 2008. World War III didn't break out in 2015. The Olympics are still going strong. By any normal measure, John Titor's grand prophecies were a total bust. Case closed, right? Well, not quite. This is where the story gets a little weird, diving headfirst into theoretical physics. Titor had a convenient, built-in excuse for any predictions that didn't come true. He was a believer in the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. This theory suggests that for every possible outcome of an event, a new brand spanking new parallel universe, or world line, as he called it, is created. According to Titor, the very act of him traveling to our time created a new timeline. Our world line was now different from his original one, with a divergence of about 1 to 2%. This meant our future would be similar to his, but not identical. Events might happen differently or at different times. It was the perfect unfalsifiable alibi. Any failed prediction could be chalked up to the divergence he created. It's a clever out that keeps the mystery alive and prevents the whole thing from being written off as just another doomsday cult fail. This explanation is what keeps his followers invested. They argue that even if the dates were wrong, the general themes of his warnings, deep political division, civil unrest, and global tension, feel more real now than they did back in 2000. The John Titor story acts like a mirror, forcing us to look at our own anxieties about where we're heading. It's a true modern myth, a testament to the power of a good story. But was the many worlds theory just a brilliant excuse? Was this whole thing an elaborate, masterfully told lie? Before we get into the evidence that points to exactly that, if you're as hooked on this mystery as I am, go ahead and subscribe and ring that bell. We explore strange stories like this every week, and we'd love to have you join our crew of investigators. After his final post in March 2001, John Titor logged off for good, leaving behind a digital ghost that has haunted the internet for decades. As the years passed and his predictions failed, online sleuths started digging. Who was the real person behind the persona? The leading theory points to a pair of brothers from Florida, Larry Haber, an entertainment lawyer, and Maury Haber, a computer scientist. An investigation in 2009 found that a company run by Larry owned the rights to the Titor story and had even published a book of the forum posts. An IP address linked to Titor was also traced to a location near their home. The Haber brothers, however, have never admitted to being involved. More recently, another name surfaced. In 2018, Joseph Matheny, a creator of early alternate reality games, claimed he was a paid consultant for the people who created Titor. He called it an literary experiment, designed to see how a modern myth could be manufactured online. Despite these signs pointing to a hoax, the legend of John Titor refuses to fade. Its influence is undeniable. The story has been turned into books, plays, and most famously, it was a core inspiration for the hugely popular anime and visual novel Steins Gate. Titor's posts were the perfect cocktail of scientific-sounding jargon, conspiracy theory, and apocalyptic dread, a story practically built to go viral. So, we're left with a fascinating puzzle. In one corner, we have a string of failed doomsday predictions and solid evidence pointing to a clever hoax, likely cooked up by a few guys in Florida. In the other corner, we have the strange accuracy of certain details, like the IBM 5100, and a story that, despite being wrong on the big things, still feels uncomfortably relevant. The warnings of a second civil war and intense social division resonate with some people even more today than they did in 2000. The John Titor story acts like a mirror, forcing us to look at our own anxieties about where we're headed. It's a true modern myth, a testament to the power of a good story. So, what's your take? Was John Titor a failed prophet from a future that never happened? A brilliant storyteller who pulled off one of the internet's greatest pranks? Or a traveler from a parallel world whose warning shot helped us narrowly dodge a bullet? Let me know what you think in the comments below.